The Nuggets are officially back. Coming to this offseason, many people expect Denver to make a few moves around the margins, but not particularly be the busiest team so far in the Western Conference. While the Rockets and the Thunder have really seemed to establish themselves as two of the top teams in the conference, I believe with the recent acquisitions and signings the Nuggets have made, that this team has done all of the right things to maximize the Nikola Jokic window. And at the start of free agency, that began with acquiring Cam Johnson, a move which many people did somewhat foresee, giving away the contract of $179 million Michael Porter Jr., along with an attached 2032 first-round pick. At first, a first-round pick 7 years out unprotected seems pretty risky, but when you have the best player in the world, it's something that you should do. If you're saving $40 million over the next 2 seasons and acquiring a player in Cam Johnson who fits even better into this core group. Cam Johnson, of course, is a very similar player stylistically to Porter Jr., but he offers even more off the dribble and for his feel for the game. Johnson has gotten better and better every single year, and this last season had a career year with Jordi Fernandez establishing a ball and player movement oriented offense. And despite not having a high profile initiator, at one point of Dennis Schroeder, later on in the season when he was moved, Johnson still had a career year averaging 19 points per game on 39% three-point shooting for a second straight season. Defensively, I would argue that Michael Porter Jr. is more length and he's surely a better rebounder. That cannot be overstated. That being said, Johnson doesn't have the reputation of being a defender teams will attack. With exception to the 2022 series versus the Mavericks, he's held up more than fine, especially for a player at his size at the small forward position. Defensively, I would say it's really a wash between the two players. But on the offensive side, it cannot be overlooked just how much this improves the Nuggets' collective decision-making by adding in one more player who can play off the dribble and make decisions, whether it's in a pick and roll situation or on the second side of an action off the ball. I feel that Johnson's off-ball shooting is the very best in the NBA, and when you compare him to Michael Porter Jr., the numbers have bared out that he is a better pull-up shooter as well. Porter Jr.'s shot selection was undeniably bold because, as we all know, he really doesn't see the contest at his size with the way that he elevates. That being said, it felt like there was a little bit more left to be desired in the shot quality and decision-making department. Johnson's one of the more unselfish shooters in the NBA as well, passing up a good shot for a great look to a teammate or himself by continuing to move more off the ball. Porter Jr. was a bit erratic at times, and as corny as it sounds to say, there is truth in the nickname, never swing the rock. Given how good of a shooter Porter Jr. is, it's understandable he'll fire off a contested three-point look above the break when he gets it, but oftentimes that led to him missing a wide open roll man for an easy dunk right in front of his face. By adding Cam Johnson, you get a more structured version of Porter Jr. who plays within his role and yet still provides the same quality of flammable shot making to hit 7 to 8 threes on any given night. That's why for Denver, I look at Cam Johnson as a clearly better fit, who at 29 years old fits fine into this Nuggets timeline. Meanwhile, for Porter Jr., his legacy in Denver will always be an intriguing one, but the one thing you can't take away is his championship role in 2023. Not complaining about losing playing time and always being a high quality teammate that even last season played through injury just to be available for the team. Now, the next part of the Nuggets offseason was in unison with the Cam Johnson move, and that was signing Bruce Brown to a 1-year deal, bringing back a player who was the 6th starter on that championship team in 2023. In essence, Brown replaces Russell Westbrook, who the team already reported before offseason after declining his player option, he would not be returning to Denver, which is going to be a loss no matter how you shake it. That being said, a lot like Johnson, I look at Bruce Brown as an even better fit in this Nuggets system. He's another credible perimeter defender on the ball, and he reminds me a ton of Gary Payton Jr. going back to Golden State a few years ago, where it's been 3 years since he played in Denver and he may not quite be at that same athletic peak, but his versatility to defend 1 through 3 defensively, while being a quality screen and roll man and a capable spot shooter to play him in so many different lineup machinations where he can fit into a variety of roles. Bruce Brown being a slightly more credible three-point shooter and more sound decision maker is what differentiates him from Westbrook, who always left his mark in the game, but sometimes that impact was a negative one if he wasn't knocking down his open looks. Similar to Porter Jr., it's hard to say anything negative about Russell Westbrook in his 1 year at the Nuggets. It was the perfect fit for him to kind of salvage his reputation, and they do not get out the first round without him versus the Clippers. At the same time, the Nuggets looking to go younger, and really bringing back a player who has already shown to be an awesome fit in the system. But then when people thought the Nuggets were done with just those two moves, swapping out Porter Jr. and Westbrook for Cam Johnson and Bruce Brown, they tap into a couple of underrated bench players who provide warm bodies to the Nuggets. May not be true difference makers, but are clear upgrades off of what they previously had, which were late round picks like Hunter Tyson and Jalen Pickett, who maybe do develop into these rotation players down the line. But it's not smart to be banking on that when you have the best player in the entire NBA and realistically the best Denver Nugget we'll see for the rest of our lives. That began with a very good trade moving Dario Saric, who was unplayable for this Nugget team, in return for Jonas Valanciunas, a player who the Kings gave up draft capital for at the trade deadline and are now giving to Denver without any draft compensation also going their way. Saric was an active detriment whenever he was on the floor on both ends, while Valanciunas comes in and is instantly the best backup big Nikola Jokic has had in his prime. And though it's an argument between him and DeMarcus Cousins, whom the team had in 2022, Valanciunas is someone who will buy into his role, won't be a high-maintenance veteran who's getting arguments with teammates, and I believe, as a rebounder, offers a ton to the table in his 10 to 15 minutes a night. Not only that, but there could be some lineup machinations where the Nuggets do play the two of them on the floor with a more perimeter-oriented trio alongside them. It's not something Nuggets are going to play a whole lot of, but that double big lineup in today's NBA is useful to have against teams that do go smaller. And I believe the Nuggets would absolutely pummel teams on the glass with that European big lineup. An offseason ago, the Nuggets really tried figuring out this front court by drafting DaRon Holmes in the back end of the first round, a player who I love coming out of Dayton, and I do believe can play a role in the future. But coming off a torn Achilles, it's nice to have the duality of an established veteran and a younger first-year player looking to establish himself. Having both options of the coaching staff is better than just one. But then lastly, the Nuggets capped off the day yesterday by signing Tim Hardaway Jr., who played a nice role in last year's Pistons team, a capable shooter who, though very inconsistent, is another veteran option to pair alongside Julian Strawther in the backup forward position. Now when you look at the Nuggets lineup, of course you have your starting lineup of Jamal Murray, Christian Brown, Cam Johnson, AG, and Jokic. But then off the bench, you have 4 to 7 different guys who can all establish themselves as rotation players based off how they play in training camp and how their start to the season goes. That starts with Bruce Brown, who's your backup guard. He can play the 1 or the 2, with Hardaway Jr. and Strawther at the 2 and the 3. While at the 4, you have Peyton Watson, and then the backup 5 spot, like I highlighted before, JV and DaRon. I'm not going to sit here and say anything else. Hardaway Jr. is one of the most volatile shooters in the NBA. One night he'll hit 7 threes, and the next 4 games he might go 6 of 18 from the field. That being said, the Nikola Jokic offense alleviates the pressure for off-ball complementary players to do more than what they're capable of. Like we saw years ago from Will Barton, another highly volatile spark plug who was in the starting lineup for 3-4 years. I'm not quite sure if Hardaway Jr. and Strawther will both be in the rotation, but allowing those two players to compete against each other will only let Julian Strawther, a third-year guard, improve. While I believe, like almost every other rotation player who's come through Denver, Will Barton, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Bruce Brown, Jeremy Grant, you name it, Hardaway Jr. will be more efficient and a little bit more consistent. For that, when comparing the Nuggets rotation a year ago to now, you go from having 6 to 7 rotation players to now all of a sudden 3 to 4 more. There's still the possibility the Nuggets do make more moves, especially with the added financial flexibility of moving Porter Jr., but I would say if this is the Nuggets lineup going into the season, it is easily the best bench Nikola Jokic has had in his prime. And when you have a 3-time league MVP coming off arguably his best season, there's not really a whole much more context to add. And I believe though you're swapping out 2 very key rotation players in MPJ and Russell Westbrook for 2 new ones, these top 2 additions are clearly better fits who are still on the right side of 30 years old. In Cam Johnson's case, this is still a player who's getting better and better every single season. Michael Malone's probably standing there kicking himself thinking, why couldn't Calvin Booth give me this the last 2 seasons after the team's previous executive and Tim Connolly left for Minnesota? When you look at it from that lens, it's simply not fair and wasn't the right way to really honor their championship coach. That being said, we saw this team's culture and commitment to the finer details improve when David Allen stepped in with only a few regular season games ahead of their first round series. They then took the soon-to-be champion Thunder, who won 68 games this season, to Game 7, with 3 of their top 6 rotation players battling through injury. In Aaron Gordon's case, I hope he is 100% healthy, because oftentimes we see players play through hamstring injuries and calf issues, and they really are affected the following seasons trying to recover. So that's going to be an important thing to monitor. That being said, in the hope that Aaron Gordon is okay going into next season, it really seemed like the Nuggets were a step away from getting back to where they were 2 years ago. And when you make this many improvements down the entire roster, it's safe to say the belief within the locker room has fostered a championship mentality. With all that being said, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like and follow for more content like this. And as always, until next time.